Welcome to the How to Be a Modern Content Creator mini-series. This is almost like a course of sorts, and each module is going to talk about different angles of creating this content ecosystem for yourself. Today's first episode is just going to be an explainer, what's going to happen, and go through each of the different titles and ideas, and then also kind of give a little backstory to what this series originally was going to be. And so back in the day, let's just start off with that. I used to create this series I called the Omni Content, and this is prudent because the whole premise of doing it was so that I could create a blog post, a video, and a podcast every single episode. So the series itself was not a topic or niche-centered series, it was a strategy-centered series. And so the series was, every episode was multiple formats, and then I would take each of those three and chop it up into micro-content. So you would take the blog post and turn it into tweets and social posts, maybe a social blog, and then on top of that, maybe some quote images. You take the video, turn it into clips, and maybe do something else with it. But for the most part, clips are the only thing you can do. Same with audio, make an audiogram or something like that. And I wish there was some micro platforms for audio. That'd be really cool. However, that was the premise of it. And the reason why I did it is because I was obsessed with Gary Vee's idea of creating 100 pieces of content a day. And really, it's not really creating, it's more like you create a handful of pillar pieces and then chop it up and syndicate it. So between syndication and micro content and repurposing, you are able to get to that 100 post number. And so the idea was I wanted to create at least once a week, if not every day, 100 pieces of content. And so that was the idea. And eventually I might still do that. But for the most part, I just wanted to share this story with you because that series, again, wasn't niche focused. And so I had topics ranging from everything. But every so often I had these mini series. So I just got done recording and posting a mini-series on my other channel around the 4 pillars philosophy. And that was a mini-series I had planned probably 5 years ago, if not longer. And I finally got it done. This series actually started out, again, around 5 years ago. And back then, the word influencer meant a lot more than it does now. And so the series was How to Be an Influencer. And I actually had to go change all the different episodes because they were kind of outdated at that point. And while the idea of being a modern content creator is essentially being an influencer, those things aren't necessarily the same anymore. And so I wanted to kind of go through each of the episodes here. Today, we're just going to simply talk about creating content and entrepreneurship and how to go about doing that. And then the next episode, we're going to talk about content formats. After that, we're going to talk about written content, then audio content, then video content. Each one gets its own episode, and then we're going to talk about content types, which are short, long, and live, and long form. So, and it goes into each piece. So long form, short form, live streaming, and then once we get to the finish of those 2 pillar types, so we have the content types and the content pillars, once we get done with that, then we go into how do you manage everything? What does your content calendar look like? What tools do you use, etc. The next episode is social media and micro content. How do you disseminate all your different contents and syndicate it as well? And then you have empathy and followers. And this is something I definitely grabbed from Gary Vee's mindset. Like, you want to have empathy with your people that are engaging with you, and how do you understand your audience? That kind of thing. Finally, we're getting to some of the final episodes, and that's the personal brand ecosystem. This is what I do with PolyInnovator, for example. Through there, I created PolyTools and the PolyInnovator gaming, that kind of thing. And so how do you really manage an omnichannel presence and create an ecosystem? And so finally, after that, we talk about the final episode, the creator equation, and how do you actually take everything you've learned and apply it. And so really, in the long run, you have this whole idea of what all you need to do when it comes to being a modern content creator. These episodes are going to be going out once a week, and I want to just be consistent with you. And so that's the reason why I did this series so soon. I was going to make some random videos about how to be a modern content creator, but this, I think, is a lot more concise and trying to get everything through to you as soon as possible. While I could do it all at once, I think it's better for you to split it off over time. PolyInnovator's channel, we talk about self-education. Some of the things I've learned in my own self-education journey is that by spreading it out, it makes it a little bit more concrete in your head, and that's why courses often sometimes have drip delays that prevent you from progressing too fast. So there is a point where you might want to take it all in once. And so for those people who are like that, if you're watching this episode, it might still be too early, but at the end, I'll make a supercut of all the videos and put it all into one. And so if you do want to watch it all at once, you can. So getting into the meat of things today, this originally was going to be 2 separate episodes, but they actually go hand in hand, like, creating content and entrepreneurship. They're kind of 2 different topics, but when you are a content creator, you have to be an entrepreneur as well. That's how you make the money. That's how you get the monetization. Let me slow down, because I know that a weakness of mine is talking too fast when I get excited. So think of this as like a short course, each episode being its own module. So making the rest of the series more aligned was the goal, and that's why I changed it. Many of this generation, so Gen Z and even Gen Alpha, is focused on being a content creator. It's an aspiration of theirs. And I'm here to teach you how to be a modern content creator. The key difference is a lot of the mindset that a lot of these creators have been teaching others is a little too dated. And I think that I really wanted to push the mindset of, like, how do you do it right now? And how do you kind of future-proof yourself as well? So the first and foremost, some people are saying don't do this. I think it's still a great thing no matter when this is build a personal brand. That is your online reputation. I remember seeing a video by Dan Coe recently, and he's like, don't build a personal brand, it's too late. And I was like, no, that's not true, because a personal brand is your resume. It is who you are online. And so it's actually more important than a resume nowadays. And so like your LinkedIn profile is your resume now. If you don't have that, then you're kind of not existing to a lot of employers, for example. And the same thing goes to your prospective viewers and followers. If you don't have a personal brand or some sort of online presence, you are invisible to them. And so look, the content you're creating is an extension of your identity. And the more true you are to yourself when you're making content, the more that becomes a reality. So there's a lot of people, I haven't met a whole lot personally myself, but there's a lot of people who make content, and who they are in the content is not the same as who they are in person. And that disconnect can be very shocking to people when they meet you in person. So always try to be true to yourself. And if that means you're not comfortable being on camera, fine. We'll talk more about that when we get into the content formats, but just a quick little tidbit on that. You can create videos without your face. Faceless YouTube channels have been all the rage, and especially with automation now, you can do a lot with that. If you're comfortable with your voice, at least, then you can just do voiceover channels, and that's fine. If maybe you don't like your voice, but you don't mind being on camera, or maybe you want to make videos, you can even go full on, just like do AI voice in AI videos. I want to preface that, like, be careful. Like, you don't want to be fully automated, because that can be kind of crappy quality. But if you do some like whiteboarding videos with an AI voiceover, that's not too bad, right? And especially if you're working on making the content perfect, that's great. But the point being is, you are going along with what you feel is best for you. And so really just create a message that resonates with your audience and reflects your own unique value proposition. The next step of this whole creating content entrepreneurship is the entrepreneurship aspect. You got to monetize your passion. And currently I'm struggling with that. I know what to do, but I've spent so much time making free content that I have not actually given enough time for my paid content. And so I haven't really made any courses in a long time. The 2 courses I made were free. And then I haven't really released any of my books yet. And so these are all things that would generate income for me passively, but I haven't done. Same thing goes for just using more affiliate links. I did go through both of the channels and edited all the videos to add my modern affiliate links, my current affiliate links, I mean. I keep saying modern a lot. But that way, if people are interested in the tools I'm using, like right now I'm recording in Meld Studio, if you're curious. And the reason being is that, like, hey, if you like that tool and you want to try it out, then you can use my affiliate link, no cost extra to you, and it helps me out and helps the channel out. So you got to think like an entrepreneur at this point. Every piece of content should have the potential to generate income, whether it's AdSense or affiliate marketing, that kind of thing. Whether the next line was whether it's through ads, sponsorships, courses, or products. And so even if it's a video that's free, doesn't even have any affiliate links, it could be a link towards your course or your book or a paid newsletter, something like that. The idea is to diversify your revenue streams early on. Next is leveraging automation and tools. And so you want to stay efficient with the right tools for scheduling, editing, distribution, and automating those repetitive tasks that automating those repetitive tasks so it allows you to focus on creativity and strategic growth. A lot of people get caught up in the editing, for example. I know I did. I hate editing. I'm actually thinking ahead of time now. I'm like, oh man, editing this video is going to be tedious because there's all these lines that I'm redoing or something like that. But in actuality, that's a skill that I've gained now. It's not a big deal. But you got to start thinking in that bigger picture. Like, what can I do now that will lead me to grow down the line? And so one of the reasons why I focused on free content so much is that I really wanted to build up an SEO following for certain topics. In fact, on my personal brand website, I moved all the posts over to PolyTools site, but on the personal brand websites where I started doing the PolyTools newsletter digest, and I wanted to build up a following around content repurposing and content creation, but mainly repurposing was the kind of goal. And I ended up building a lot of SEO for that. And I actually compete with a lot of the bigger repurposing tools, even when it comes to just SEO awareness on Google. And so that was one of those things where all I was doing is making free content, but now I'm actually a thought leader in that space because of that SEO. And that's why I want to make this channel too grow, because then I can even be in the video aspect as well. So we're going to end the episode here. And the idea, just to recap everything, is creating content is going to help you with your entrepreneurship. If you're trying to build a business, you want to create content for the marketing. If you want to be a content creator, you need to build a business around it. They go hand in hand. And that's why this is the first episode of this How to Be a Modern Content Creator series, because you got to think like a businessman. Cheers. Thank you. Welcome back to the How to Be a Modern Content Creator video series. This episode is about content formats. And the first point I want to make is that you have to get to your first 100 posts. Let me say that again. You have to get to your first 100 posts, your first 100 reps. Now, regardless of what format you choose. And so I know Roberto Blake has talked about this a lot, and a lot of other creators have brought it up, but I wanted to take it a step farther because a lot of people, when they hear that, they think 100 posts total, and that kind of mixes with short form and long form. And then when it comes to audio, written, and video, they think that 100 posts just counts for all of it. No. Each one of these different content formats and content types have their own counter, if you will. You have a little clicker, and every time you make a video, every time you make a short form video or long form video, those clicks count towards that path. And so if you decide to switch after making 33 posts in audio, but you realize you'd rather be on camera, that's okay. Do you. But just know that your 100 reps are starting over once you start with that new format or type. And so content, and more content is the key thing here. So trust me, if you think you're doing enough, you're wrong. But here is how to do it sustainably so that way you don't burn out. Whenever you're starting to create content, it can be kind of hard. It gets a lot of creative juices kind of burned out in a way. So you'll start working really hard to make this video, but then you wanted to make a podcast and you want to make a blog post, and now you're like, okay, I don't have enough energy anymore. As you get better at doing it, the quality will come. That's why we always keep saying 100 reps, because your first 100 reps are going to suck. And even if you have some really great videos in there, something about the quality is not great. It actually took me hundreds of reps before I started getting this light. Like, let me just turn it off right here. You can see a difference here. It's like my face is all shadowed. You can't see much. As soon as you turn on the light, the video looks a lot better. And even though I knew how important lighting was, I didn't get one until a couple hundred reps in. And that makes a difference in the quality of the video. Even just before recording this, I tested and recorded this, didn't like it, deleted it. But I also realized my audio was a little too quiet, and so I turned it up, and I'm also making sure the aim is right at my mouth, so I can actually lower it down a little bit to get a better direct point of line of sight. My point being is that these small little details are stuff that you learn as you create content for a long time. It wasn't until like my 6th Polycast interview that I realized, oh, my format for my show needs to be changed pretty dramatically. It's still going to be the same flow, but the actual steps I take need to switch around a little bit. And these are lessons you learn once you put in the reps. So the first thing you need to do is pick your primary format. When I started out, it was blogging, and then I did podcasting, and then I did video. Despite the fact I really wanted to do video, I was really kind of afraid. I did not like being on camera. Now I have hand gestures. I'm looking at the camera. I feel comfortable. I'm not nervous anymore. Even live streaming, I'm not that nervous anymore, even though I still kind of have that anxiety about it. Whether it's video or audio or written content, just commit to your first 100 posts. It's about building momentum and mastery, not perfection. You got to get the skill first. If you switch formats, your learning curve resets, so be prepared for the grind. Again, I want to encourage you to do all three. That's the point of this series. Being a modern content creator entails that you do all three to some capacity. You may not have a blog, but you will have a newsletter. You may not have an interview podcast, but you might have solo casts that you do. Or even you just repurpose your videos into a podcast and call it a day. Even if you're not necessarily making all three, you're making one or two. One of them might only be like half effort, like a newsletter versus a blog. Like I know newsletters are hard, but like they're not as deep or in depth as blogs. And so it's one of those things where maybe you don't want to blog. Maybe you just want to do a weekly newsletter so you could build up your email list. Cool. So it's kind of half the effort, but it's still one of those things where it takes a lot of time and focus to do. And my point being is that like you might have your main thing, which is the video, but you're still doing all three. The next step is to master repurposing. One piece of content can be transformed into multiple formats. Videos can become blog posts, podcasts, or infographics, and the other way around. I used to have this Miro mind map where I talked about how do you turn each of these pillar types into each other. So you can take a blog post and then use text-to-speech to make it into a podcast and then turn it into a video using like InVideo or Veed or something like that. I need these text the video generator, so to speak. Now there's a lot of ways of doing it now. Even back then though, there was some whiteboard animations you could do. And then the idea of like a podcast, you can do the same thing with the video and then transcribe it into a blog post or newsletter. And the video is probably the easiest. You transcribe it, make that into a blog post, cut the audio out, make it into a podcast. All three types can easily turn into the other ones just by repurposing, let alone actually making all three too. Consistency over perfection. Don't aim for viral content day one. Focus on building a sustainable content routine, and the more you create, the better you'll get, and eventually the audience will come. And the more you create, the more doors will be into your content ecosystem, allowing for another chance of virality. And so this is why I often encourage people not to delete their old content. Even if the content is not related to your new niche, keep it on there. It's your history. People want to see that, and that'll still lead people to your channel. Someone might see your channel for one topic, but stay for another. That's okay. It's okay to switch. People get so worked up over picking your niche, and it's like, you really don't need to. You need to have one thing to start off with and to build up repetition and growth. But once you know what you're doing, you can split off from there. Other than that, I just want to go over the three content formats before we wrap up one more time. You have written content, such as blogs or newsletters. You have audio content, such as podcasting, really. There's technically radio and technically music, but really it's podcasting for the most part. And then you have video content, such as YouTube and TikTok and technically live streaming, but live streaming is kind of its own thing. However, being on video is probably the most helpful right now because it's the easiest to repurpose out of all three. It's a little bit harder to still turn a blog post into a video, despite the fact that the tools make it easier now. And then on top of that too, there's a lot of tools that turn video into short form video really easily. Opus Clip, for example, link down below. I'm not used to calling people down there, but the idea of creating any of these content, you need to put those 100 reps first. And the sooner you do 100 reps with all three, I think would be a really great way for you to improve. If you wanted to do 33, 33, 33, that's fine. Like you split your attention three ways. However, just know it's going to take probably twice as long. Maybe not three times as long, but twice as long to get done with all of them. And you have to put in twice or three times the amount of work in that same time span. If you have the time and energy, do it. Start your newsletter when you start your YouTube channel. Keep it all together and start from the beginning. I think that's a great idea, but only if you have the bandwidth to do it. All right, lesson of the day, 100 reps. Welcome back to the How to Be a Modern Content Creator series. This episode, we are talking about written content and blogging. And so blogging's been around for a couple of decades now, but newspapers and journals and diaries have been around for ages, countless many millennia at this point. And as someone who's done it for half that time anyways, not the millennia, the decades part, I can officially say I don't think it's going away anytime soon. So over the years, when it comes to any kind of content format, there's always going to be these naysayers that say, oh, blogging's dead, podcasting's dead. In reality, that's just their opinion, and people sometimes take that as fact. Even if they are thought leaders in the space, they are just a person, right? And we thought that podcasting was dying at the end of 2010s, and then 2020 happened, and it blew up again. 2022, it blew up again. And so there's always these different waves. When it comes to blogging, it's been around for so long that I think it's going to last a lot longer than this. And with the whole idea of blockchain blogs down the line and word stamping and time stamping your post on the chain, there's going to be a whole nother wave of stuff down the line. And then on top of that, ever since around 2020, newsletters have been resurging quite a bit. And whether you're doing it on Substack, Beehive, Paragraph, or whatever, newsletters have been a big growth. And WordPress makes up a majority of the websites online. Now, personally, out of all of those, I use Ghost CMS because it combines the power of WordPress, but also the speed and efficiency of the newsletter platforms and the minimalism. So the idea of blogging going away anytime soon, I think is ridiculous. One thing I want to kind of touch on while I think about it is this idea of social blogs. Those keep popping up and disappearing, and let me explain what I mean by that. There are different levels of written content. You have like the Facebook post, which is short, and you have the social blogs, is what I call it. The social blogs and the newsletters are kind of the same level of effort and size and length, if you will, of words. And so the newsletters people make are generally around 3 paragraphs with a few different links and stuff like that. They're not too long. These social blogs are around the same idea. And so you can think of LinkedIn articles, LinkedIn posts, or Medium articles. There's also a website called vocal.media that's kind of in the same realm. And it's these platforms that are essentially social networks. Substack kind of counts too because it has its own network. It's one of those things where taking advantage of the social network aspect and blog on top of it. Medium used to be really great back in the day for that. Now they've gotten so overzealous about monetization that they kind of ruined that social network factor. And so I don't really see a platform right now besides Substack being viable for this, but I can definitely see it coming back with a lot of blockchain platforms again, like Hive blog or something like that, or Paragraph. And the social blog's kind of an interesting concept that's probably future-proofing yourself by knowing this a little bit. So let's talk about the longevity of blogging. Despite the rise of video and social media, blogging remains a cornerstone of content creation. It offers depth, like in-depth articles, SEO benefits, and space to build long-term evergreen content. I mentioned in another episode of this series that I built up the content repurposing SEO on my site just by making blog posts, and some of them were pretty long. I think my How to Be an Omnichannel post was 7,000 words long, but that was also a Poly Pro post, which is my paid posts. And so it's one of those things where whenever you create content, you want it to last. You want it to be evergreen. And generally, blog posts are going to be more evergreen than a lot of videos and podcasts can be. Really, what matters is the subject matter of the content piece. But blogging generally has an easier way of staying in archives or doing on the web archive, whereas videos and podcasts aren't necessarily as longevity-centric. Next is written content is versatile. Blogs can be turned into social media posts, newsletters, or even video scripts. And I mentioned in the last episode, you can even take a blog post and turn it into a video using AI. A strong blog post can fuel multiple pieces of content across platforms. And honestly, while videos can be turned into clips, that's really all you can do. Same with audio. Blog posts can be turned into quote images or newsletters or tweets and all of these different kind of methods of repurposing. And then you could even turn those quotes into videos as well. So blogging actually has more ways of repurposing, which is really amazing. The next step would be to establish authority. If you want to become a thought leader, writing is often kind of still this, in our minds, a much more deeper, connective way of working with content creators. And so when you read someone's post, you kind of connect with it differently than when you see it on video or when you hear it in your ear. And so by reading, there's a lot more concrete learning that can happen with that. And so blogging allows you to do deep dive into topics and showcase expertise and become a thought leader. A well-maintained blog can position you as an industry leader and create a loyal reader fan base. From here, I don't see much more to talk about when it comes to really written content. These more individual posts about each different pillar type don't need to go too in-depth, really. What matters is you want to put in the work of creating your website. That is your home base. The cool thing about a blog is that it is your own. Yes, you have to have a hosting company, but that's really like your main kind of crutch. If you have your own ways of hosting, it's even better. But my point being, YouTube, you have to succumb to their whims. And like Adpocalypse in 2019, you end up getting screwed or something like that. And you have to also deal with their AdSense and their rules and all that jazz. Podcasting platforms, Google Podcast died. And Amazon Podcasts are kind of it's just there to exist. Doesn't really matter. And so really this comes down to like iTunes and Spotify. And even iTunes has no discoverability. So what's the point of being on there besides just syndicating to it and calling it a day? So really all that matters is Spotify, in which case you have to succumb to their whims. By having your own blog or newsletter, generally the newsletter on like Substack, you're still on their sites. But again, they're not necessarily as bad as YouTube about it. But by having your own website, you can bring people to you. You bring people to your ecosystem, and then they're on your ground. They're on your land, if you will. And that's the beauty of having a blog. And so you have your own place for people to come to. Welcome back to the How to Be a Modern Content Creator series. I'm Dustin PolyInnovator. I've been a podcaster for 7 years now, and between my 2 different shows, audio has been really interesting to be as a creator. When I started out writing, but eventually I wanted to get my foot into the water for audio and video. And I was a little too scared for video when I first started out. So I did my time with podcasting. I think that was a great idea because it got me used to hearing my own voice when I'm seeing my recordings or hearing my recordings in this case. And so that's a great trajectory for a lot of people too, if you want to get your nervousness out of the way. So let's talk about this. Depending on how you like to present yourself, this may be a great way to start. Even though I started with writing, it was the audio format that got me to come out of my shell, really. So the first thing to do is to find your voice. Do you want to talk like this? Or do you want to talk like this? If you want to have that presence that's deep and that kind of thing, you have that choice. You can talk however you like. I talk a little too fast. So taking a deep breath and slowing down, my voice changes. And so these are the kind of ways of finding your voice, like literally, but also what is the tonality? How do you want to sound? And what do you want to be known for? So podcasting is a great format for those who feel more comfortable speaking than writing or being on camera. It is a powerful medium to connect with people authentically with your audience through conversation. So whether it's a solo cast, and so it's kind of like a fireside chat, or if it's an interview with someone else, people get to come in and either talk with you or hear from you, or to hear from you and another person together. And so it's a really unique way of connecting with people, especially since most people listen to a lot of videos on YouTube, even in a new tab, while doing something else. So nowadays, like they kind of have that same podcast mentality with YouTube stuff. However, as a podcast, you can be listened to in the shower, in the workout room, or the gym, or on a walk, or in the car while you're on the road trip. These are all different ways for someone to be connecting with you. And if you're not there, then you kind of have missed out on that opportunity for people to be listening to you and hearing from you more often. So one of the lessons I want to teach you, and this is a great moment to mention it in this series, is that the more places people can find you, the more times they're going to see you and hear from you, meaning the more likely they're going to resonate with you, follow you, and buy from you. So the first episode was talking about the entrepreneurship aspect. You want to be there where people are going to be. So you want to be in the places that your listener, your followers, your subscribers are going to be. And if someone might follow you on YouTube but doesn't spend that much time on YouTube, they like to listen to podcasts instead, then you're missing out on that person by not making a podcast. So the other thing, another next topic here, is the ease of production. Compared to video, audio content is a lot easier and faster to produce. With minimal equipment, just need a mic, really, and post-production, you have to do some EQing and balancing a little bit. You can focus on delivering high-value content consistently. And so you can even batch record these a lot faster than doing video. With video, I have to account for lighting, the camera, changing clothes if I'm batching or something like that, or in this case, just really being presentable on video. However, with audio, it's one of those differences that like makes a big ease of just getting into it and doing a lot of it. I will say I've never been that great when it comes to producing a higher quality mastery of the audio, so I don't necessarily EQ it to greatness or master it really high. I always kind of just like, okay, does the audio sound balance? Like at some points my guests might be really quiet and I might be really loud, and there's that disconnect. And so I have to bring myself down or bring them up, and so we're equal. And then I take the whole audio and bring up the gain a little bit so you can hear it. You can always turn down your own volume, but I want to make sure that my show it's not too quiet and making it hard for you to listen. So it's easier to turn things down than it is to turn it up. And so that's the kind of thing that like it doesn't take that much time to learn that skill. The more advanced steps and the more advanced tools, yes, it does, because you need Adobe, Audition or something like that, or some of the other fancy digital audio workstation tools. But I just use Audacity or DaVinci Resolve, which have pretty good capability, and you can even use automatic tools like Adobe Podcast to really make it easier for you. The next step, or next topic, is building a deeper connection. Podcasts create this intimate experience for listeners, like I mentioned earlier, fostering a loyal audience. The long-form nature, like with interviews, allows you to explore ideas in depth, helping you to develop that authority and trust. People want to see you as a thought leader. By making a podcast, it helps you with that process. Really, you're going to see that with all three pillar types too. Each one in some way creates that authority for you. By having all three, you get to combine that power. It's not just one or the other, they actually compound with each other. And even this series, I'm going to make a supercut of it, and then I'm going to probably post it in the PolyTools Creator Spotlight podcast. Even though it's not an interview series, it'll be long form enough. And on top of that, this is such a prudent series for my channel that I think it's really important. Again, people will be able to listen to it and then manage their own content journeys, build out their ecosystems by listening to me while they do their work. Really, there's not much else to say. Like I mentioned in the last episode, these 3 episodes are going to be a little shorter because they're just talking about the different content types. Each one needs to be talked about a little bit more in depth when it comes to like how do you build a YouTube channel? How do you actually do the podcast? Like how do you do the distribution? That kind of thing. We'll get into that in some later episodes, and I'll probably make individual videos down the line of how to start a YouTube channel, for example. But for podcasting, you just need a distribution host. I use Transistor.fm, link down below if you want. And I can have an unlimited podcast with them. If you want a free option, there's always Podcastle. And don't do Spotify for podcasters. It's not good. But again, really, that's all you need. You just have to learn how to do it. And we'll get into that later on. Cheers. Thanks for being here. Hello and welcome back to the How to Be a Modern Content Creator video series. This is the episode about video content and YouTubing. So I got my Think Media hat out. They are a YouTube channel around YouTubing, and I learned from them a lot from back in the day. A great resource by them is their YouTube Secrets book. It even has a little bit of a course to it too. Great way for you to get started. So video is the medium of this time of the internet. Maybe the next generation will be VR, but for now, make the most of it while you can with video content. Because right now you're watching me. You may be listening to me on the SuperCut, but for the most part, most of you are going to be watching this video or watching the clips from this video. The power of visual storytelling. Video is the most engaging content format right now, and it allows you to communicate complex ideas visually and emotionally. I may not have infographics across the screen because I just don't have that motion graphics capability, but I can at least give you that energy, my hand gestures, my face in the camera, being here with you talking about it right now, making it easier to capture and hold your audience's attention. The next thing is YouTube is a search engine, just like Google, and YouTube is the second largest search engine after Google. Creating video content on YouTube not only grows your audience, but it also improves discoverability and organic reach through SEO, because your videos are going to show up in the Google feed. One thing to note is that TikTok is actually starting to give Google and YouTube its run for its money. A lot of Gen Z actually search on TikTok before they search on Google, if they search on Google at all. And that's something to keep in mind, that like both YouTube and TikTok are 2 different platforms, but they're both places where people are actively searching for content and news and different updates. When you make content, you become a thought leader, and by making YouTube videos or TikTok videos, you become a thought leader in that video visual format, and you get to take advantage of that search engine optimization of being on those platforms. The next thing, like we talked about before, making that connection with or attention of the audience. Build personal connection. Video content puts a face to your brand, unless you're a faceless channel, but even then, it humanizes you, allowing viewers to connect with you more deeply and connect with your message more deeply. The authenticity of this can lead to higher engagement and loyalty, and that is a beautiful thing. That's why I wanted to make this kind of mini course. It was a series. It wasn't just like I'm going to make a huge long video. No, each one needed to be individual. In case you came for a certain reason, you could skip to that module, or you needed all of it, you can go to each module. By me making this into a video rather than a blog post series, you get to see the dynamics of how I explain things and the excitement I give you when it comes to these different topics. I may be leaning I may lean more myself towards blogging, but I love making all three content types. And I definitely think that in order to be a modern content creator, you do need to make all three content types. And like I mentioned in the last episode, we're not going to necessarily go into how to make a YouTube channel right now, but really, you have your Google account, you go to YouTube, you probably already have an actual account here anyways. You probably have a channel without realizing it, because everybody technically has a channel. And you can actually go in there, start editing it, add a thumbnail, add a banner across, maybe make your first video that's your channel page video, and just get started. Like, it's really as easy as that. I talked about in one of the first episodes creating 100 posts. That includes making 100 videos. If you want to start, just do with shorts now. Shorts make it really easy. Do 1 to 3 minute video and create content like that. Really, there's not much else to say except for repurposing. One thing I talked about in the blogging episode was that repurposing content from written or audio, it's a little bit harder. There's ways of doing it. There's some tools out there, but making or repurposing content from video content is a lot easier. And just to shout out Opus clip, actually, let me explain this here. There's a lot of repurposing tools on the market. I've been around the world for a while when it comes to that. And when Opus came out, I was able to take all my interviews, really all my videos, toss it in there and make clips from every single video. I actually generated close to 2,000 short form videos based on my long form stuff, and was able to post those out. And all three of my channels had grown from making content in that short form variety. And by making more consistent videos like you're watching now, it's going to help me grow. But by having those shorts go out, oh my gosh, that made a huge difference on how many people are actually seeing my channel. I went from getting maybe 1,000 views a month, barely, to getting 20,000 views a month just by posting shorts. And so if you're interested in trying out Opus Clip, the link's down below. You help out the channel too when you click it. No cost to you, but I just love being a partner with Opus because they helped me out so much. I needed to market my interviews, for example, for both channels, and now I get a way to do it. So the point being, it's a lot easier to repurpose long form video into short form video. And so keep that in mind. Cheers. Welcome back to the How to Be a Modern Content Creator series. This episode I'm really excited about because now we're going to talk about the content types. Before we talked about the pillar types, which are written, audio, and video. Now we're talking about the format types, which are short form, long form, and live streaming. When you understand those two triangles of content and how they intersect to like a Venn diagram, that'll make a huge difference in your content production ecosystem. So the first thing I want to go into is that I explained this a lot a while back on a different video, had some visual elements to it. So if you want to go check that out, I'll link it down below. But let's start off with the idea of what kind of content are you making? If you're making a blog, then generally you're going to be long form content, but maybe you want to be building thought leadership on Threads, or I wouldn't say Twitter anymore, but Threads. You can start doing that short form stuff. Technically that counts as like short form content, but I think that building a thought leadership on a social media profile is no longer really a viable option. It is an adjacent part of being a content creator. So by creating long form content, you get to send out those links out to all these different platforms. You don't want just your whole feed to be links. You have your links, you have some thought leadership posts that you're making, you have some curation that you've done, and that's a great way of creating this bite-sized feed. And so you have a mixture of things. That's how you make a social media profile grow nowadays. You give them access to your long-form content, but you're not just spamming them left and right. You come up with thought leadership posts, like whether it's how to be a modern content creator, and create tweets like that. But then now I have tweets going out, for example, for every category on the PolyTools website. And so those are my right hooks, like, hey, go check that out kind of thing. So the first format is the short form content, right? Quick, bite-sized videos like TikToks or Instagram Reels are perfect for grabbing attention fast in this fast-paced world. Because if you want to have your interview series grow, you need to have clips to bring people into it. And now with related links on YouTube, it's a great way of doing it. YouTube has a little bit of a benefit over Instagram and TikTok in that regard, but TikTok has a lot more interest in podcasts, it seems like. And so they're easy to create, they're highly shareable, making them ideal for building awareness and engagement. I mentioned in the last video that by creating tons and tons of short form videos of my interviews, I was able to grow across the board. Actually, when I first started out too, I started posting to Pinterest too. People don't realize Pinterest is a video platform as well. And I ended up getting more views on Pinterest than all my other platforms combined. I was getting like 30 to 50,000 views on there. It's crazy. And now on some of my platforms like Instagram and YouTube, I got closer to 20,000 views. But I think TikTok was a little bit lower, surprisingly. But maybe it's because of the age of my account. The point being is that like just by making clips, I was able to grow an immense impression. I was able to grow immensely with impressions and see a lot more progress and get a lot more people interested in my show. The next content type is long form content. That's how I started out. That's how a lot of people start out, really, either making blogs or podcasts or videos. Longer videos or podcasts allow for more in-depth exploration of topics, such as the PolyTools Creator Spotlight interviews, where we get to really dig into how does that creator make their content, what are their strategies. So it helps you establish your expertise and offer value. And even like this SuperCut, if you're listening to it all together, that is a long form piece of content right there. Technically, even the solo episodes are long form content, but the really long form helps with watch time, helps with retention, that kind of thing. And platforms like YouTube reward long-form content with more watch time, improving your visibility on the channel. The next format, and the one I struggle with actually the most, is live streaming. Live content adds that intimacy layer. Like if you were watching me make these videos right now, you would see me make the little mistakes here and there where I might trip over my own word or say things a couple times that I'm going to edit out later on. But by being live, people get to see that. They get to see that you're human, you make mistakes, that kind of thing. So it gives you that real-time interaction with your audience, making them feel like they're part of your journey. And like, maybe I should have live streamed this. I don't know. You can tell me down below in the comments if you think I should have. It's great for building community and trust. And if you're a gaming channel, you really need to do it. And so one thing I want to touch on in this episode before we move on to some of the more individual episodes is that you need to be making all three, really. I mean, live streaming you can kind of get away with not doing, but with it growing so vastly right now, I think it's a really smart idea to do it, and I'll explain why in a moment. But making long-form content is kind of the start. You need to get used to actually making real pieces of content. And not to say short form's not, but it's a completely different beast. You can repurpose your long form into short form, but making short forms from scratch is its own challenge as well. So going back to one of the early episodes, you got to make 100 reps for every content type and pillar type. So if you're making long form blogs, that's 100 reps. If you're making long form podcasts, it's 100 reps. If you're making long form videos, that's 100 reps. If you're making short form videos, that's also 100 reps. And technically repurposing counts towards those reps, but really making is different too. Like actually creating that short form video is a whole skill in of itself, and it's valuable to learn. And so that's something you want to keep in mind, and doing 100 live streams will be a huge difference too. Like not only will that make you more comfortable on camera, which will help improve your videos, but then on top of that, you have these long form videos, because generally live streams are a few hours long versus like an hour for a long form video. And then you can turn those live streams using things like Opus clip or something like that into different clips. So you can even have a strategy where you have your medium length videos, like your long form content, and then you have your live streams, or in my case, I do interviews, but I could always do interviews that are on live. And those are your long form stuff. And both of those can be repurposed into shorts, and you can always make shorts as well. And so you have all three on your channel to help you grow, take advantage of all those different features of YouTube. Realize it, like that'll tell YouTube, hey, this creator knows what they're doing. And so that's kind of the idea there. And again, I made a video kind of explaining this kind of trifecta, if you will, a while back. I'll link it down below so you can check it out. Other than that, thanks for being here. See you in the next one. Hello and welcome back to the How to Be a Modern Content Creator series. This episode is actually around the long form content. And this is something I am more used to. This is what I started off with. And like I've mentioned in the past, what you anchor towards is generally the one you've done the most. And I've done long form audio, written, and video for a long time. And so this idea of creating long form content, anything over basically a short, which a short is now up to 3 minutes, or you can even count some TikToks, which are longer than that. Any short form video are generally vertical and less than like 5 minutes. Versus anything over 5 minutes and generally horizontal is long form content. There are some long form vertical too. So this idea of long form gives that depth. It gives you time to get into depth, which then encourages people to see, okay, this person has authority. So long form content, whether it's a blog post, video, or a podcast, it gives you the space, the time to explore topics thoroughly. And so this allows you to position yourself as an expert and offer more value and foster that deeper connection between you and the person watching or consuming the content. When you create longer content, it also allows you to maximize SEO and discoverability. So when you're creating long form blog posts, all those different words you are writing out then gets basically searched onto Google, And Google ends up finding, okay, this person knows what they're talking about because it's longer. Sometimes just being a longer post will help a lot. Same for longer videos. The longer video it actually helps with watch time. Long form YouTube videos can actually help you rank you higher in search results because it shows that you have a lot more information on that topic. And so it brings a lot of organic traffic towards your content and gives you more visibility long term. Then finally, the repurposing potential. So being able to take your content and turn it into something else, that is a key aspect to creating long form content. So one thing I have mentioned with long form versus live is that technically you can turn a live stream into long form content, and that's a way to kind of cheat it, if you will, and just kind of have extra there. But whether it's live stream or long form VOD or video that you recorded, like I'm recording these right now, that content can be broken down to smaller pieces like clips, quotes, and or summaries even for other platforms, the summaries can even be like LinkedIn posts. So one deep dive piece, this pillar piece, can fuel weeks of social media posts, emails, or even other smaller videos, maximizing your content output. So that's a really beautiful thing about repurposing. Like repurposing is a topic that I've nerded out about quite a bit because it's just so nice to be able to take something you've already made and turn it into a lot more other pieces. So just for example, this is technically a long form series. All these videos are generally around 5 minutes or longer, and on top of that, I'm going to make a supercut of it at the end, for that way anyone who wants to watch it can have a little bit of like easier time consuming it all. Plus, by doing this, I also make it easier for me to put it into Opus Clip, because instead of doing 14 videos into Opus Clip, I could just do one long one and just do it all at once. And then on top of that, I can also turn it into an audio cast, which will allow me to make it into a podcast. And so it's one of those things where I can take this one long form piece of content that I'm creating from these 14 videos and turn it into a lot more other pieces of content. So I'm taking pieces, turning it into a big piece, turning it into pieces. But again, repurposing can be used in a lot of different ways. And this is also kind of in a way syndication too, because I'm syndicating it to the audio platform. And so being a long form content creator really entails you have enough information to distill over a longer period of time. And I mean, a long form piece of content, like I said, can still be like 10 minutes. That's still long. It's just not necessarily long like an interview. Most of my interviews are generally 60 to 90 minutes, just because we usually have a lot of things to talk about and it's a fun conversation, so we want to keep it going. And so that is really long form content, and that's where I get a lot of that clip, a lot of those clips, a lot of the watch time and that kind of thing. So I'm not going to ramble anymore in this episode, but yeah, that's it. Welcome back to the How to Be a Modern Content Creator series. Let's talk about short form content now. Now, just for context, I was on Vine back in the day, and I'm pretty sure I made like 24 videos on there, which is not a lot, but the fact that I made any before I was really a content creator is kind of a big deal. And so I was just a user of the platform, trying to take advantage of the opportunity there and just experiment with how to make short form videos. Making 6-second long videos was really hard. I think they eventually made it 15, but for the most part, it was pretty stressful trying to figure out how to do that. And then I saw the platform die out, and I saw it firsthand. I had to move over with everyone else too. I was already on all the other socials, but I actually realized that I could help a lot of the other creators. Like, hey, like I know how you could build a following on Instagram and YouTube. Even back then, I had this kind of idea of like how to do it. I just needed to do it myself, really. And then eventually, around 2017, I started really building my personal brand. And that's when I started doing, videos and blog posts, a ton of blog posts, but even some videos towards the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, I think. Actually, no, it was the end of 2018 that I started doing videos. But around that time, I also joined TikTok. And so I joined TikTok in the beginning of the year, I think. I was able to make short form video before I was able to make long form video. It was still kind of hard for me to be on camera, but I started journeying out with both. And I think that by doing long and short, it made me feel a little bit more comfortable on camera. I needed that practice. I think a lot of people might only need one or the other. But by making short form content, you get that fast engagement. And so short form content like TikToks, like the aforementioned TikTok, Instagram Reels, or YouTube Shorts, they are designed to capture attention quickly, and in just a few seconds, you can hook your audience and increase the chances of shares and viral reach. I saw so many videos and channels on TikTok go viral over the years. So like I said, I've been on TikTok since it was Musical.ly back in 2018. And at this point, not even including the Opus Clip stuff, but I made thousands of short form videos. And then including the Opus Clip stuff, I think total, I probably made around 7,000 short form videos. Maybe 6, but I'm pretty sure it was 7. Lost track a little bit when it came to how many solo videos I made on TikTok. Point being, though, is I was really trying to grow on there. I was actively trying. I actually went from 200 followers to 900 followers in a week due to a campaign I did. And I tried emulating that again, but again, it's one of those things where the consistency aspect is a huge deal. And I kept telling people back then, you should be making like 5 posts a day. And I wasn't following my own advice because it was hard. It's not an easy thing to create from scratch 5 posts a day. Repurposing is a whole nother beast. And so that's why when I finally got clips of my interviews, I actually was posting 8 to 10 times a day. And that helped me, I think, quite a bit as well. But I wish it was a couple years sooner, to be honest. So the idea of short form, though, is efficient content creation. Short form content requires less time to produce and edit, allowing you to stay consistent with your output. Like I said, it was hard, but they're not going to take as long of a video, or as long time to edit as a long form video. This format is perfect for testing ideas too, so promoting longer content or staying active on social media. So since TikTok is a social platform, by being active on there, you're being active in the meta of the world. There are people I know who aren't on TikTok, and so they're out of the loop when it comes to a lot of news around the world. Things happen on TikTok and Reddit first, and if you're not on those platforms, then you get disseminated news weeks or months later. There's always the funny joke about how people are on Instagram Reels, seeing a video, sending it to their friend who saw it 3 months prior on TikTok. TikTok is the forefront of the internet right now. And on top of that, short form video is algorithm friendly. All these social media platforms prioritize short form content. Even YouTube is really making a push for it, making it a great way to grow your audience rapidly. Like I mentioned before in one of the other episodes, I got 20,000 views on my 500 subscriber YouTube channel. That is insane. And it's mainly all from short form content. Like 98% of it was from short form content. So with the right content, you can take advantage of the algorithms to increase your exposure and reach new viewers. I was trying to join up with Reels and Shorts way before they actually were even fully launched in the US, because I knew they were launched in like Brazil and India. So I wanted to take advantage of that because I knew they were going to be big, and I was right. They have grown a lot of attention. I know that a lot of people don't like Shorts on YouTube, but the same thing was happening with live streaming. People are going to be against it at first and then eventually adopt it later on. I might be a bleeding edge or at least early adopter, but there's these people who are complaining about it are late adopters. They're going to eventually. And so by making short form content, not only do you get more brand awareness, you get more skills quickly. Imagine how many reps you can put in quicker through short form versus long form. And so while I encouraged you in the last episode to do long form, it may be wiser to do short form. Then you can syndicate it onto your YouTube channel, onto your Instagram, create some content flow going, that consistency factor, and then later on work on your long form content after you learn video editing or after you learn how to be on camera, that kind of thing. So really, it's good to be across different platforms. Let's talk about something before I wrap up here, the idea of syndication. Now, we are reaching a point where at the time of this video, it's still good, but you might need to change it down the line. I'm not sure. Is the idea of taking the same video and posting it across all the platforms. Right now, it's fine. In fact, I encourage you to do it. When I made a clip of my show, I would post it to TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, Pinterest. But now, and I would have done Facebook Reels, but generally the platforms limit you on how many, like the social media schedulers, they limit you on how many socials you can have, and Facebook wasn't a priority. Now that I use Nuelink a lot more, I can use Facebook Reels just fine. However, right at this moment, at the time of this video, LinkedIn is pushing hard on short form video. And so now I'm actually going to restart my endeavor to post short form. And now I'm going to post to Facebook Reels because I wasn't really doing it before. I'm going to post to Pinterest again because Pinterest likes, a little bit of repetition. And then I'm also going to post to LinkedIn. So I actually made a new strategy now for short form video based on these platforms that I neglected before. But imagine how many platforms you can take advantage of by just posting. If you made one video, you can post to 7 different channels. That's insane, right? You could really just take the same video, post it 7 times or 6 times, and call it a day. And so that's really how you get to that omnichannel reach, just by building up that process of creating content, then syndicating it. Not everything can be syndicated, and sometimes you really shouldn't, but your images on Instagram can go to Pinterest too. That short form clips, or short form images, technically, short form images. Technically, long form images are infographics, but you get what I mean. By repurposing it there, you get to create that consistency on Pinterest. Really, I'm digressing. Cheers, thanks for being here. Hello and welcome back to the PolyTools How to Be a Modern Content Creator. This time we are talking about live streaming. Now, to be completely upfront, this is the area I know least about, but I know all the tools and I've learned a lot on my own. I just don't have as much experience with it. So I just preface that just because I want to make sure I tell you what you can do and what I'm planning on doing, but you also should experiment yourself more so than the other stuff that I talked about, because I have experience with all of that. Now, I've live streamed a few times already on my own channels, and I've done at least a dozen different interviews that were live streamed. And I'm going to start doing more and more with multi-streaming. But let's get into the whys of why it's important to do live streaming. So the first thing to mention is the interaction, the real-time interaction. Live streaming allows you to engage directly with your audience, answering questions, receive immediate feedback. This real-time connection builds trust and creates a sense of community around your content. And I mentioned in a couple episodes ago, like maybe this series would have been really interesting for me to make while live streaming the recording of it, essentially. I think that would be kind of cool, so people can come see what am I doing, how am I doing it. And then I could also multi-stream it too at the same time, which will give me even more reach. And we'll talk about that at the end. The other thing about live streaming is the authenticity and transparency of it. So like I was just mentioning, by me recording all these videos, I could also live stream at the same time and then show people like, hey, I do make mistakes. I'm not just editing them all out. I'm a human being kind of thing. And that authenticity can be really interesting for people to see as your fans. The unfiltered nature of live content kind of really lets that flow. It lets the audience see the real you, if you will. The next thing is, I've talked about this a few episodes ago, where if you're trying to build a YouTube channel, you'll have your long form content, which is medium, if you will. You have your long form content, so either interviews or live streams, and then you have your short form content like the shorts. And the cool thing about live streaming is the repurposing opportunities of it. After the live event, you can go and toss it into like Opus clip and automatically clip up your show. And this also can work for gaming content too. And then you have key highlights of your show that can be seen, and you can link it using related videos to that live stream. So if someone wanted to see where that clip came from, they can see more of it. And so this really is a nice balance. Roberto Blake talks about this as his strategy. He talks about how he makes like a live stream, and Harris Heller has also said this too, where they have 3 bullet points, and they use those bullet points to create the base video of 3 different videos. So from the live stream, you have your live stream on the channel, people can be part of it, and the replay is also on there as well. But then you're creating 3 videos from it, and then you can get clips from the whole thing. And so really, you get to maximize the medium, long, and short form on your channel just from one endeavor. And so there's a lot of repurposing involved with that. The other thing I wanted to talk about, something I made a video on about a month ago or so, about the meta of content creation right now. And I see that as multi-streaming. Multi-streaming, simulcasting, it's not really anything new per se. Restream.io has been around for years. However, what I'm seeing a lot in the gaming community is multi-streaming to vertical and horizontal. TikTok made it difficult because you have to either use their live studio. Now you can use Streamlabs to do the TikTok connection and get the key through them, which is nice. But even if you were just vertical streaming to Instagram or YouTube Shorts, still that process of vertical and horizontal was kind of difficult. So there's 2 tools that can do it. Atom, which is a multi-stream plugin for OBS, and you have to have enough bandwidth on your computer to handle it. Or you could use Streamlabs, which is kind of like Restream.io that allow you to multi-stream using a splitter that they provide as a service. However, it costs money. So depending on which angle you're going for, either save some costs but use more resources on your computer, or pay a little bit to have that split for you plus a TikTok, it's kind of a balance. And so what I'm seeing is, and what I really want to do with my gaming channel, is stream vertical to TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram, and then stream horizontally to Twitch, YouTube, maybe Facebook, probably not Twitter, but Kick and Rumble, maybe DLive and all that jazz, and just add all those RNTP links to the ones that it may not be natively supported. And then I'm going across like 12 different channels just for one stream. And then you can take it and turn it into videos and then shorts. So you really maximize your reach through live streaming. This is why this particular episode is so interesting, because by doing that, doing the Roberto Blake kind of formula, where you have your live stream and the Harris Heller method with the bullet points, you can make like 3 or 4 VODs, like videos, and that way you can make consistency more of a thing. So if you wanted to do it once a week, you could have 3 videos a week. So you do your live stream on Sunday, then you have 1 video Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then from Sunday to the next Sunday, you have 1 short going out a day. That's probably even more than that, honestly, considering how many clips you would get from the live stream. So every week, you could generate a ton of content just from 1 live stream, presumably from an hour or 3 hours long. And that is a great way to really start building up that content flow and consistency. Now, I'm going to end it here because I'll keep rambling on this if you couldn't tell. But don't underestimate the power of live streaming. All right, we are in the final stretch of this How to Be a Modern Content Creator series. Only a few episodes left, 4 actually at this point, including this one. And so I wanted to talk about how do you manage everything. So I talked about lit video, audio, and written, short form, long form, and live. All these different ways of syndicating and creating and repurposing content. Well, how do you manage all of that? And this is something that I struggled with a lot growing into a content creator. And that's actually kind of what led me to find my niche on my personal brand channel, where I talk about knowledge management for polymaths. And the polymath aspect being the multidisciplinary, the knowledge management being the organization, personal PKM kind of thing. And I started doing that PKM, personal knowledge management, by organizing my own self-education, creating my own degree, but more prudently to this, I created my PolyIn content ecosystem, which was my omnichannel strategy. Now, you can just call it the PolyTools ecosystem at this point, but essentially, regardless of the name, the point was I was using Notion at the time, I'm using Obsidian now, but I'm able to keep track of everything I'm creating, which is not only really important when you want to find the link to share a piece of old content, but also to see what you have made in the past and what you could remake now, what you need to expand upon now, and having that data of like, what have you done? And I think that's very, very important. It also helps you plan ahead. Like, I want to do this that day, this day, this that day. And by having that plan, you can accelerate your progress a lot faster. So let's get into this. As a modern content creator, you are one stepping stone, truly, away from being an entrepreneur. So why don't you take the first step towards that direction? The first thing is to create a content calendar. Plan your content in advance, like I was talking about with like Notion calendar, for example, and organize your themes, your niches, and just really understanding what your publishing schedule is going to look like. And this helps ensure your consistency and you actually make sure you're coming out with content regularly. And by having this plan, you can be more strategic about what you come out and when. And it reduces the stress of like last minute content creation. So that's why I'm batching these videos out. I didn't say it before, but that's what I'm doing because I needed to have something consistently going out. And really, it is valuable for you to come out over time so that way you can absorb each episode truly, not just take it all in at once. And then the other thing is like utilizing tools and automation. So invest in that, really. You don't have to necessarily pay for most knowledge management tools. I did pay for Notion because I wanted to have, at the time, you needed to pay in order to have a certain level of blocks in the tool. Now it's unlimited, but back then I paid for it. I managed to find some cool deals on some affiliate links though. So using automation software to streamline your workflow as well is a big deal. From social media scheduling, which shout out to Nuelink, link down below, to analytics, which I'm not necessarily great with. I think Metricool is pretty good for that. These tools can help you focus on the creativity aspect while managing the logistics effectively. And that's kind of the key thing. You got to do the logistics, but you also need to have the creativity. And they really go hand in hand. And then finally, you want to set goals and track your progress. And that's hard to do when you are not keeping track of what you're actually doing. So that's kind of where my PIOS, the overarching system I created on the other channel that I talk about, really fits in, because I talk about the yearly, the quarterly, the monthly, the weekly, and then daily levels of what you're doing. Not just for content, but even for personal life as well. But that way you can regularly assess your performance and are you actually doing it, and then you can adjust your strategies based on that data. And one thing I really find important is that quarterly alignment. And so I think in like maybe like every quarter, I'll batch out a whole bunch of content for the YouTube channels like I'm doing. And that way I can have stuff continuously coming out. Because what I ended up finding was a struggle for me, and this is probably a good example to use in this episode, is that whenever I was creating content, I was trying to make my solo content, but then interviews came out. And when I started doing interviews, I focused too much on that, and then my solo content started dying. And then I went back to doing a little bit of both, but kind of did too much solo content, and interviews kind of were interspersed. And then I started my second channel and second interview series. And even though I'm gotten a lot better with interviews, I've even hired editors to help take the pressure off of me, although I don't have one right now, so if you know somebody, let me know. And the thing is, by having the solo content and the interviews being on my plate, I ended up kind of having to pick and choose, and it wasn't really helpful. But you need both for the channel to grow. You need that long form for watch time and for clips, but you need that short form for SEO and purposes like you're watching now. And so by having this batching schedule, it allows me to get the solo content taken care of. Then I can focus on doing the interviews and shorts and making sure everything's coming out consistently. So really define what those goals are. If you want to post once a week, 3 times a week, maybe even once a month, like in the example of Kyrgyzstan, that's a great YouTube channel. But yeah, that's really how you manage everything, is using a tool like that. I'm looking at Obsidian right now. Normally I make a separate page for every video, but since this is a series, I have all the videos in one list here, and as I make the videos, I scroll down to the next one. And it's really nice because it allows me to keep all the bullet points in mind when I want to create. And so when I make videos, I don't necessarily script out the whole thing. And so yes, I might ramble a little bit, but for the most part, I'm able to give you information based on my own memory because I know this stuff well enough that I could just tell you. But it's helpful for me to not be too strict about the script, because then I end up getting in my head and I end up stumbling and the videos get a little too monotone. So if you look back on my first channel or early back, I scripted too much and it was very monotone. So I'm digressing here, but by managing my content, I'm able to come out with stuff more regularly. Cheers. Hello and welcome back to the How to Be a Modern Content Creator. This time we're talking about social media and micro content. So going back to that idea that Gary Vee always talked about, creating 100 pieces of content today. It's not so much creating, it's more about just making the content and repurposing it and syndicating it and stuff like that. And we'll get more into how to go about disseminating later on, but I wanted to talk about the shotgun versus sniper approach, because this is an interesting dynamic that a lot of people end up confusing. They think one is better than the other, when in actuality they're both good, and usually one or the other is better at a certain time. And so in order to be a modern content creator in any space, you need to have an audience, specifically getting in front of people's eyes, and then choose one social to start and expand from there. By getting on one social, you can kind of get used to it and understand it, and then you get on to the next one. And so you really want to be everywhere. You want to be omnichannel. But just like with the written audio and video, you need to put in 100 reps and get used to that platform first. Now, Threads and Twitter are pretty much the same. So if you're getting into that one, you're going to know what to expect. But both platforms are different. The people on Threads are different than the people on Twitter. And so even though it's the same kind of platform, you got to get used to the different types of audiences there. Now, there's a lot of comparisons to be made about YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok, but all 3 platforms are different, and the content on all 3 of them are different too, despite the fact there's a lot of overlap. And so understanding the nuances between those 3 is very important. So you want to leverage that micro content, whether it's generated from you, just making a tweet or a video, or repurposing. So creating that bite-sized content tailored for the social media channel that you're on. And the micro content could be things like quotes, clips, infographics, even just simple quote images, that kind of thing too. And so something that can be easily shared, and it just allows you to increase your visibility and engagement ideally. This helps attract people towards your funnel, which will lead them towards the longer form of content. So going back to that shotgun versus sniper approach, I generally prefer the shotgun approach, but ironically, my next strategy for this channel is going to be more sniper focused, and I'll get to that in a second too. The shotgun approach involves spreading your content across multiple platforms without really a clear focus. It's not so much a niche thing. You're not doing you might even be doing 3 different niches when you're doing it, or you're just taking your piece of the content. So let's say you use Opus Clip. You take an hour video, it generates 30 videos, but 22 of them are usable. Like the other 8 are like duplicates or not necessarily good enough for your taste. So you use like 20 clips there, and that's a lot of clips. Presumably 3 or 4 of them are going to pop off a lot more than the rest of them, just because of how all these different platforms work. I've had videos where I post a dozen from an interview, and 2 of them got a lot more attention than the rest, right? And that's how you find that data. I prefer the shotgun method because I'm just putting anything to the wall and seeing what sticks. And then I can probably take what sticks and then create content from there, and I get more data based on what people actually like. Now you have to actually make sure you do something with that data, keep that in mind. But then the other approach is taking the sniper approach and maybe only choosing 3 from that 30. Some people might even only do 2. but you're essentially narrowing it down to just the best of the best. And it's hard to know which one is our best unless you actually really know your show super well, or you have a specific plan of what you're trying to create. So the sniper approach is a little bit harder when you're repurposing. If you're creating content from scratch, sniper can be a little bit more easily done. But let's say you have that 3 posts that you're like, oh, I know these are going to do really well. Well, then you could post those, and presumably people are going to know you more for that kind of quality aspect. Not to say that the quantity doesn't lead to quality, because there's a lot of clips that people might not think are perfect, but they're really great in that 20. That's why I thought, okay, I'd rather get those really great out there as well, not just the perfect. And now let's go back to the sniper that I mentioned earlier. I need to do reviews on this channel for various tools. And it's one of those things where I have 1,000 tools on my site. I need to start reviewing a lot of these, particularly re-review some of the ones I looked at before because they're different now. Repurposed.io, Opus Clip, Nuelink, but they've all done significant updates since they got reviewed. And so it's some of them I haven't even touched as a review at all. And so I need to start doing more reviews. I also thought I want to do a sprint of really optimized short form clips that really kind of grab people's attention, more perfect and really great, if you will. And I realized I can combine those 2 endeavors. I can do now, especially now that YouTube does 3-minute long shorts, I can basically do these 3-minute, 2-minute long reviews of various tools, crank them out at a higher rate, but they're also more optimized. They're not just like toss into Opus and create it from there. I'm actually editing them myself and creating that clip and trying to do transitions and keeping the attention focus and switching between scenes, stuff like that. Things that are going to take some effort either in the recording or the editing process more than just using some of the editing features in Opus. And not to say that Opus isn't good. I'm just saying like I'm going to be doing a lot more effort to make these clips, but they're going to be short so I can do more of them over time at least. Finally, let's get to the last point here. Engage your audience. Social media is not just a broadcasting tool, right? You're not just sitting there sharing all your links and sharing all your clips and calling it a day. I mean, right now that's what I'm doing on TikTok because TikTok is kind of, I don't care enough about TikTok right now. But the point is, on Instagram, I'm still engaging with my audience. YouTube, I'm definitely trying to engage with my audience. And so TikTok, I'm just kind of putting out to the side. The point being, you're not just sharing stuff there. It's a place to connect. Engage with your audience through comments and polls and even stories. I love doing stories on Instagram. That's how I engage with a lot of my followers. And so building that community around your content. And it encourages loyalty and amplifies your reach through that word of mouth because they share your work with their networks. And just a note, YouTube is also going to be building or releasing, they already built it, but they're going to be releasing a communities feature on your channel. So that way, if you wanted to create this little Discord channel on your YouTube channel built in, you can have that discussion there. And so that's where you can really kind of come in with ideas. But yeah, social media is not just a place where you share your stuff and call it a day. You need to be active on there as well. Oh, before I quit recording, I was about to quit. I ended up coming up with a strategy because I needed to have more content on Twitter, Threads, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I also wanted to take advantage of the YouTube community. There's a difference between the community and communities because communities is 2-way, community is just 1-way from me. But I wanted to start posting more on there. So I created tweets and messages that I wanted to share across all these written platforms. And then I syndicated them. While LinkedIn and Facebook are longer form, I have other strategies for LinkedIn that I want to do that are going to be separate from this campaign. But I also cross-posted this campaign to YouTube community. So now for the next year or so, I have posts scheduled out across all these platforms consistently that are adding value. They're not just like, oh, I'm sharing links. I made posts that are supposed to be engaging and come up with ideas to talk about, stuff like that. Stuff that I would normally tweet out anyways. And so that way I can kind of be ahead of things. Cheers. Empathy and followers. This is how to be a modern content creator, part 12, if you will. What your community thinks about you is the influence that you carry whenever you become a creator. Never forget this. The people who you create for are what matter most. When I started this series, I actually came up with the idea of how to be an influencer. That was the idea of the series before I changed it to the modern content creator aspect. And being an influencer is someone who has an influence over their audience. Like, hey, if I like this, they'll probably like it too. Let's show them why I care about it, that kind of thing. And that way they can care about it too. But in order to influence people, they have to have that affection towards you, and you have to have empathy towards them. And there's that balance there. So you got to understand your audience, take time to listen to them and understand their needs. Don't ignore their comments and learn their preferences and pain points. maybe conduct surveys even too. Like there's a lot of polls, and YouTube is pushing polls quite a bit as well, and try to engage in conversations. This is why making communities or even joining communities is a great way of reaching that audience. And it fosters that loyalty too when it comes to that, because they start to feel valued, they start to hear back from you, and they feel like, oh, I can actually connect with this guy. The next thing would be to create with a purpose, right? Always remember that your influence comes from the community you serve. And so like Gary Vee always talks about empathy, and have empathy that like, hey, the people who are commenting on you, whether they're positive or negative comments, they're coming there because they're watching your video, right? They took their time out of their day to consume the content you created. And that's something that like, is not necessarily a small feat. Like they actually took their time and they found you too. This world is huge. There's tons of creators and there's tons of people in the world. It's hard to find people. And if they found you, that's something to take into consideration. By prioritizing their needs and creating content for those needs, you cultivate that strong connection, enhance your credibility as a creator. There is a different level of being a content creator. You have the content creator who wants to create content for themselves that they made. They're like, hey, I want to make this, and so I'm going to make this. And there's the content creator who makes content for the people who are watching them, and so they're catering towards that. I find myself kind of in a balance between the two. I know that there's a lot of content that I want to make, but I also know that it's kind of content that needs to be made and people want to see it. And so I want to be the creator to do that. But I also need to get over my own ego and create content that other people would want to see based on their feedback too. And so this really understanding that there's a balance there. All right, so this episode is going to be a little bit shorter than the rest because the point is be empathetic, take care of your followers, and engage with your community. That is the big aspect. Even if you don't have a Discord or an actual like community platform, you have a community through your content ecosystem. Understand that each individual platform, Twitter, Instagram, the Facebook to Twitter, or TikTok, will all be different audiences, but they're all part of that same ecosystem, and understand that they are part of your group. Take care of them. Ironically, I was going to make a different video about this topic, but I realized this is perfect for this episode of the How to Be a Modern Content Creator series. So the idea of building out your personal brand is one of those things where it's your online reputation. It is who you are on the internet. And one thing I really wanted to point out is this idea of being adaptable to all the changes. But on top of that, you're also going to be kind of polymathic, which is what my other channel is about. And so the idea of being this polymathic content creator and having this jack of all trades approach is kind of key to this whole mindset. And so the reason why I wanted to bring this up is that it's really hard to manage many different topics, channels, platforms, even series. And in order to be a modern content creator, the whole point of this series is that you are taking advantage of all the different platforms and the way you are approaching your content production. Meaning, even if you start with just a blog post like I did, turn that into a video and podcast, or if you do all three separately, or you do a video and transcribe it and cut the audio out, whatever pathway you decide to go with, you're still doing all three, then you're chopping them up and making content from that, micro content from that, and really trying to create this omni-channel presence. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that like become a polymath, right? You want to be polymathic and create this omni-channel marketing empire, if you will. Because it is the lifeline of your online presence. The more you create, the more you are seen and heard and understood. And that's really key because yes, being in person sociable is helpful for networking and stuff like that, but your online network is just as important, and people often neglect that. And so this idea of creating this personal brand ecosystem is what we're talking about here. And so I was struggling because I need to make these videos, and so I want to focus on editing and recording these. But then on top of that, I also need to do interviews, right? Both of my channels have interviews for two different purposes. And the plan that I have going forward for YouTube is that you have solo videos, which in this case are how to be a content creator videos. I have interviews, which are interviews with content creators. And then I have shorts, which are clips from those two things. Now, I am considering at the time of this recording, probably by the time it comes out, actually, I will be doing this. But YouTube is now doing the 3-minute long shorts, and so I want to take advantage of that. And so I might start doing the reviews in a vertical format, or at the very least a short format. I might do it horizontally and vertically just to take advantage of that dynamic. But the point being is that I want to create these short form reviews so that way they're easier to produce en masse, but then I could also still do high quality because because they're so short. And so that is the key that I wanted to focus on. So my point being, I'm having like 3 or 4 different things just for one channel, and I have 3 channels. And so it's one of those things where I'm kind of constantly going back and forth. And so I just wanted to share that frustration, but also what I'm doing to counteract it. So batching content is a great way to make sure you stay consistent, because this is all one series. It's great to batch it. And I didn't want to necessarily say that I was batching it, but I am, right? I'm doing this to make it easier for you to consume, but also easier for me to create. And so it's a nice balance. And while I could create a video every week, and that would still be just the same quality, it's a lot more work to keep that habit going every single week when I'm already trying to do other habits. So by batching one series, you could do this with interviews, but I find that making the guests wait to release the interviews for a certain time period is not necessarily ideal. Ironically, I still make them wait because I either procrastination or I have a long list of interviews to get out. It's like recorded too many too quickly. That's been kind of an issue for me in the past. But because I was so distracted by interviews, I didn't make solo content. So now I'm trying to fix that by batching, getting about a quarter of the year, 3 months ahead, essentially, of content done. And then I can focus on doing the interviews weekly or bi-weekly. I might take it down a notch or something like that just to make it easier to get out. And then I can create more shorts, either through Opus clip and repurposing or just by actually making them with the vertical plugin on OBS. And just pro tip, I also have the stream cam, so I can put it in vertical orientation, so I have a vertical camera as well. The last point I wanted to make in this particular episode is this continuously evolve and adapt. This is what I mentioned by the whole polymathic thing. By being a generalist, you're able to adapt to the new surroundings. This is what kind of goes into the whole digital renaissance of sorts. The generalists are starting to become content creators and personal brands because they're able to adapt to this new environment. Humanity is still kind of learning what the internet can really truly do, even though it's been around for decades now. But the changes that we're going through as a species and as a internet people are dramatic. And so we really need to have that. As you grow and learn, so should your personal brand. When these new platforms come out, you should try them. Even if you may not stick with them, you should at least try it. I stuck with TikTok. Maybe I stuck with it too long. Maybe I didn't stick with it hard enough. And so as you grow and learn, you should be polymathic. Stay open to feedback and be willing to pivot your strategy based on your audience's needs and your market trends that you're trying to target, because things are going to change. And if you put all your eggs into TikTok, but now TikTok gets banned, or now it's kind of getting oversaturated, so now all the benefits of TikTok that people always love about are kind of no longer there, like the virality. So this adaptability will help you maintain relevance in your field and strengthen your brand ecosystem over time. That is it for today, but this episode was very important to me to make, and I'm really excited to have been here. Welcome to the final episode of this short mini course or series around how to be a modern content creator. This episode is about the creator equation. Now, this is sort of a finale of sorts, but I'll probably continue this series down the line with added episodes and just add them to the playlist. But for now, this is the last one. And the creator equation is something I came up with because out of all the years I created content, I started noticing trends. Either I was good at one thing, but I wasn't good at the other thing. I was doing this thing, but I wasn't doing that thing. And here are the things that I'm referring to. So you have strategy plus automation times execution equals success. So your strategy is very important. So what I see a lot of people do is like they might execute really well. They get a whole bunch of content out over and over and over again. I kind of did that for a while, and then I had to reevaluate my strategy. Luckily, I started doing the strategy pretty early on, and I definitely think that the equation is first, second, and third kind of thing. Because you should develop your strategy first. You need to plan out what you intend to do as a content creator. What kind of content do you want to make? How do you want to make it? How do you distribute it? How do you repurpose it? All these things you should try to figure out as soon as possible. Even if you just get started and start making content and repurpose it later, that's fine. But you need to start thinking about it now. And so develop that strategy. You can use people like Gary Vee's strategy, but it's kind of advanced. And even though he simplifies it, and people like Doc Williams and myself have created alternative versions to simplify it even more so, or make it more detailed, the idea behind it is very multi-function, multifaceted creator level, meaning you have to done it for a while, put in the 100 reps, as we mentioned in previous episodes. And so the next thing, after you developed your strategy, is automation. And automation is really great, but it's a slippery slope. People often spend too much time fiddling around with these auto posters and creating this like, oh, I want to automatically quote send out quotes on my Twitter feed to kind of help with that thought leadership. Well, that's great. It worked in 2011. It doesn't really work now. Now, sending out tweets to build up thought leadership does work, but you generally have to make them yourself. You can't just quote other people. Curation only works to a degree, and in my opinion, curation only works on top of creation. Some creators do curation, and depending on your niche, you might still be able to get away with it on certain platforms. But curation should be an additive, not a replacement for creation, at least nowadays. And so that's what I mean by automation. They like automating that curation there. And I automate anytime I make a new blog post, video, or podcast across any of my channels, it automatically posts to my socials. And while that can be a little annoying, I did take the time to make different versions of the posts, so that way it at least cycles through a few of them, and I might go back and add some more too down the line. And Nuelink has been really great about that, because other tools don't give you options. You literally have one option. You can make it any way you want, but it can be really repetitive very quick. And a lot of those tools break down, like Zapier constantly broke on me, and so you waste a whole bunch of time trying to build out your automation. So just putting it out there, Nuelink, link down below if you want it. It's really helpful for automation. The last thing, and I'm actually going to get to the points here in a little bit, but this is kind of just the introduction to it, is the execution. And as someone who's made over 600 blog posts, hundreds of videos, hundreds of podcasts, and 7,000 TikToks, I can definitely say I have not executed enough. After countless pieces of content that I've made, I have not executed well enough. And so this is why I wanted to mention this in this video, because I think a lot of people think they've done so much. They made 200 videos or 200 podcasts. That's great. Still not enough. And the reason being is that you could have done more in that time span. Think about, actually, when I started doing interviews, I was prolific. I started basically around April and May 2020 doing interviews because everyone was stuck at home. It was a great opportunity. I ended up doing around 60, I think, in 2020, and then I did about another 40 or so over the next year and a half. And since then, I've done a total of 170 or so between my two shows. And that was on my shows. I've done around 80 podcasts as a guest on other people's shows over the last 4 or so years. And that's a lot. But after 4 years, I could have done a lot more. I've seen other podcasters do 400 or 500. Now, comparison is the bane of all my creators. But it was interesting how I saw them do twice as many interviews as I did, despite the fact maybe their quality was actually better, but they were also focused just purely on the podcast. I was doing YouTube, podcast, and blog, not to mention newsletters too. And so while I'm not giving myself crap, I am also saying I could have done better, and I definitely could have executed way better on the solo content. I spent all my focus on work and on interviews that I didn't do the solo. And so this is my point, where I might have had great automation and great strategy, but I didn't do execution. One point when I was younger in my journey, I was doing great execution, even had some automations, but I didn't have the right strategy, and vice versa. You have to have all three for success, and that's where a lot of people struggle, and that's why I'm already 5 minutes in, which is what most of these episodes have been lengthwise total, and yet I haven't even got to my bullet points yet. So let's talk about them. Strategy is key. Develop a clear strategy that outlines your goals, your targets, your audience, and the content types that you want to create, and the distribution channels, because you got to figure out where you're going to be putting this stuff before you can really set up those automations. You need to set up those profiles too. And so a well thought out strategy provides that direction that you need to work towards, and it helps you stay focused on what really truly matters for your growth and for your brand. Because TikTok might be great for me, it may not be great for you. Pinterest may be great for you, but it barely affects me at all, right? And so you got to figure out what strategy is important for your type of content, your niche, and what you can create consistently. The next thing is leveraging automation. So like I mentioned before, automation can be a big, helpful gain to your following. People can actually see your content more often, because even if you post every single day, half your audience is not going to see that post just because they're not on that time of day. Or maybe they end up don't see it in the chronological feed at all because of just the way these platforms work now. So you have to be posting often, really, to try to reach every single follower. And you're most likely not going to get more than 80% of your following seeing your content at max, really. So using tools and automation software to automate these repetitive tasks, such as scheduling a post. I can't stand having to share my videos and blog posts onto social media across all these different platforms. So I do it automatically, right? And so it allows you to have more time to dedicate your energy towards content creation and strategic planning. Automation helps you helps you have enough time to develop a strategy, helps you give you more time to actually execute that strategy. And so that's where that plays into that equation. The next bullet point, the last one here, is focusing on execution. Like I mentioned, I spent so much time on interviews, and I always bring this up, and I'm not mad that I did interviews. I'm mad that I didn't make time, at least one day a week or something like that, to solo videos. And had I just spent one day on blog posts, one day in solo videos, and then the other 5 days on the interviews, that would have been sufficient to keep me more consistent, and I would be farther along now than where I was. So no matter how good your strategy or automation tools are, success ultimately depends on how much you put out, how much you execute. And so consistently produce high quality content, adapt based on the analytics and performance, and maintain a regular posting schedule. Consistency is key. They always talk about that, and it really is true. The more consistent you are, the more likely you're going to grow. The more you execute your plan, the closer you are going to get to achieving your goals. This is the last thing I'm going to say on this. The creator equation is strategy plus automation times execution equals success. If you can follow that equation, you will be successful as a creator at some point. Takes time, be patient, and you'll get there.